The darkness here is different. It is not the empty electric darkness of the modern world, but a heavy, velvety cloak that holds the scent of dried herbs and old wood. You drift up from the depths of sleep, slowly, rising through layers of dreams until your eyes flutter open. For a moment, you do not know where you are. Above you, the ceiling is low and textured. You trace the lines of rough-hewn timber beams darkened by years of hearth smoke, supporting a roof of tightly woven straw. The thatch is thick, a natural insulation against the world outside, but here and there, where the craftsmanship has aged, tiny pinpricks of dawn light filter through the cracks. They look like dusty stars trapped indoors, suspended in the cool morning air. You lie still. There is no urgency here. There is no hum of electricity, no distant roar of traffic, no digital glow demanding your attention. There is only silence. It is a profound, ancient silence. It settles over the room like a soft blanket. If you listen closely, you can hear the very rhythm of the house, the settling of the stone walls, the faint rustle of straw, the slow, rhythmic breathing of the world waiting for the sun. You push back the covers. The fabric is coarse against your fingertips, heavy wool woven by hand, smelling faintly of lavender and sheep's lanolin. The air in the cottage is brisk, nipping gently at your skin as you sit up. You swing your legs over the side of the wooden cot, your bare feet finding the floor. It is packed earth, cool and solid, grounding you instantly in this reality. You stand and move toward the small window cut into the stone wall. There is no glass, only a wooden shutter that you unlatch with a quiet clack. Pushing it open, you invite the morning in. The world outside is bathed in a pale, ethereal gray. Mist clings to the ground, swirling around the bases of the other cottages like a silent sea. The village is asleep. You see the silhouettes of thatched roofs, the dark outlines of fences, and rising above it all in the distance, the square stone tower of the church. It stands as a silent guardian, its presence a reminder of the order and faith that govern this life. You breathe in. The air is crisp, tasting of dew, damp earth, and the faint, sweet smoke of a dying fire from a neighbor's chimney. You turn back to the room. It is time to prepare, to step into this slow river of time. You dress simply. A tunic of linen, soft from many washings, slips over your head. You tie a belt of leather around your waist. Every movement is deliberate. In this time, nothing is rushed. Patience is not just a virtue, it is a necessity of survival. You walk to the door, lift the heavy iron latch, and step out into the dawn. The village path is uneven, paved with cobblestones worn smooth by generations of footsteps. You walk slowly, the sound of your own movement absorbed by the mist. You are heading toward the center of the village, toward the stone fountain. In this era, water is the gathering place, the heart of the community, and the silent stage for the most delicate of human dramas. As you approach the square, the light begins to shift. The gray turns to a bruised purple, then a soft bleeding pink on the horizon. You stop in the shadow of an oak tree, observing. You are a witness to the morning rituals. A young woman is already there. She stands by the stone rim of the well, a clay pitcher resting on the ledge. She is dressed in a simple gown of russet wool, her hair braided and tucked beneath a modest linen coif. She does not move to draw the water yet. She is waiting. Her posture is still, but there is a tension in the way she holds her hands clasped before her. She is looking down the path toward the blacksmith's forge. This is how love begins here, not with bold declarations or digital messages, but with the quiet agony of waiting. It is a language of silence. Moments later, a young man appears. He wears the leather apron of an apprentice, his arms dusted with the soot of yesterday's labor. He carries a bucket, his excuse for being here at this hour. He walks toward the well. He does not run. To run would be to draw attention, to invite scandal. In a world where honor is the currency of a family's survival, discretion is the armor of lovers. You watch them as he approaches. They do not embrace. They do not even speak at first. In this world, a touch in public could ruin a reputation. The air between them is charged, thick with things unsaid. He sets his bucket down on the stones, a few feet from hers. He looks at her. The gaze is intense, stealing the breath from the morning. It is a look that speaks of long hours in the fields, thinking of her, of songs composed in the mind but never sung aloud. It is the amor cortés, the courtly love, trickling down from the castles to the village square. It is a love that thrives on distance and yearning. He reaches into his tunic. His movements are slow, blocked from the view of the village houses by the bulk of his own body. He pulls out something small. It is not a diamond or gold. Such things are for kings. It is a comb. You see the pale flash of wood carved with painstaking care. He must have whittled it by firelight, smoothing the teeth of the comb, perhaps carving a tiny flower or a cross into the handle. A gift of time, a gift of labor. He places it on the stone rim of the well, sliding it gently toward her. She glances around, her eyes darting to the shuttered windows of the nearby houses. Seeing no one watching but the mist, she reaches out. Her fingers brush the wood. For a split second, her hand lingers near his, the heat of their skin almost bridging the gap, but they do not touch. She slips the comb into her pocket, a secret treasure. She looks up at him then. Her eyes soften, a silent message of gratitude and promise passing between them. A promise to wait. A promise that despite the arranged marriages discussed by fathers in the tavern, despite the class divides that might separate a craftsman from a farmer's daughter, there is a bond here. He nods, once, a solemn bow of the head. He draws his water, the rope creaking softly against the stone, a sound that seems loud in the quiet dawn. He lifts the heavy bucket, turns, and walks away back toward the forge. He does not look back. To look back would be weakness. To look back might give them away. She remains. She touches her pocket, ensuring the token is safe. Then she fills her pitcher. You watch her walk back toward her cottage, her step perhaps a little lighter than before. You stand alone in the square now. The sun has finally broken the horizon, casting long golden beams across the cobblestones. The village is waking up. A dog barks in the distance. The heavy wooden door of the church creaks open, the priest preparing for the morning mass. You feel the weight of what you have just seen. In your world, love is often loud, fast, and easily discarded. Here, it is a slow burn. It is woven into the fabric of survival, hidden in the folds of a linen dress, carved into a piece of wood. It is patient. You take a deep breath, filling your lungs with the ancient air. You feel a strange sense of peace settling over you, a sinking of your heart rate with the slow, deliberate rhythm of this time. You turn to walk down the path, deeper into this world, ready to discover what other secrets the silence holds. The day has only just begun. The morning air is cool against your skin, a damp, heavy freshness that clings to the wool of your tunic. You stand for a moment outside the cottage, letting your lungs fill with the scent of wet earth and wood smoke. The world here wakes up slowly.
There is no rush, only the steady, inevitable pull of the sun rising behind the gray veil of mist. You begin to walk down the beaten path that leads toward the center of the village. Under your feet, the ground is uneven, a patchwork of packed mud and smooth river stones worn down by generations of footsteps. You can feel the history in the soil, the weight of centuries of routine. Every step you take matches the slow rhythm of the village coming to life. Ahead of you, the silhouette of the village well emerges from the fog. It is a sturdy, circular structure of rough-hewn stone, the heart of this community. You pause near the edge of the clearing, leaning against the rough bark of an ancient oak tree, and you simply watch. This is the time of water and work. You see the young women arriving first, their movements practiced and graceful, despite the heavy wooden buckets they carry.
Their dresses are simple, woven from coarse cloth in shades of russet and faded blue, their hair tucked modestly beneath linen caps. There is a quiet dignity in their labor, a rhythm to the way they lower the ropes and haul up the water. The creak of the wooden winch is the only sound that cuts through the morning silence. But as you observe closer, you realize that the well is more than just a source of water. It is a stage. You notice a young man approaching from the path leading to the fields. He carries a scythe over his shoulder, the metal blade dull in the low light. He does not walk directly to the women, for that would be improper. Instead, he stops a few paces away, pretending to adjust the strap of his sandal. You see his eyes. They do not scan the crowd. They are fixed on a single point. He is watching one of the girls, the one with a shawl the color of dried lavender. He does not speak. In this world, love does not begin with words. It begins with the patience of a gaze. You watch as the girl turns, her bucket full. She knows he is there. You can tell by the way her posture stiffens slightly, the way a flush of color rises to her cheeks, visible even in the pale dawn light. She does not look at him directly. The village elders are watching, and the fear of scandal is a high wall that surrounds them both. But as she swings the bucket to her hip, her eyes dart toward him for a fraction of a second. In that fleeting moment, an entire conversation takes place. It is a language of silence, heavy with emotion. You feel the intensity of it vibrating in the air like a plucked string. There is no need for grand declarations. The simple fact that he is there, delaying his work in the fields just to see her shadow, is a vow in itself. You notice the small details of their courtship, things that would be invisible to a hurried eye. As the young man finally moves to pass her, the distance between them closes. They do not touch. To touch would be forbidden, a breach of honor that could ruin her prospects. But the space between their sleeves narrows to a breath. You see his hand move subtly near his waist. He is not reaching for her, but rather he seems to be signaling something. You follow his movement and spot a small object tucked into the darker recess of the stone wall near where she stands, a small flat stone that looks out of place. Later, you know, she will return to that stone, and beneath it she might find a treasure, not gold or jewels which belong to lords and kings, but something far more precious in its scarcity. Perhaps a ribbon, embroidered by hand with a thread of bright crimson, or a small wooden comb carved during the long, dark winter nights, every tooth smoothed by a knife wielded with devotion. Or maybe just a piece of white bread reserved from a feast, wrapped carefully in a leaf, a gift of sustenance in a life defined by hunger. You feel a sense of melancholy settle over you, but it is a sweet, warm feeling. You understand now that in this era, the scarcity of contact makes every interaction sacred. Because they cannot speak freely, their silence becomes loud. Because they cannot touch, the air between them becomes charged with electricity. You watch another pair near the trough, a squire perhaps, or a stable boy, holding the reins of a horse. He is waiting for a maidservant to finish scrubbing a tunic. He hums a low, simple tune, a melody you vaguely recognize as a ballad of the troubadours. It is a song of longing, of a knight who loves a lady he can never possess. The maidservant does not look up, but her scrubbing slows to the rhythm of his humming. It is a serenade so discreet that it blends with the wind, a secret shared in the open. The sun begins to crest over the thatched roofs, burning away the last of the mist. The bell from the small stone church begins to toll. Its deep, resonant iron voice rolls over the village, signaling the start of the true day. The sound is commanding, a reminder of the order that rules this life. The church, the family, the duty. These are the pillars that hold their world up. Love must grow in the cracks between these stones, like ivy finding purchase on a castle wall. The young man with the scythe straightens up. He cannot linger any longer. The fields await, and his absence will be noted. He turns to leave, his heavy boots crunching softly on the gravel. The girl in the lavender shawl hoists her bucket, the water sloshing rhythmically against the wood. She turns back toward the cottages. They part without a goodbye. They do not look back. They do not need to. The knowledge that they have been seen by the other is enough to sustain them through the long hours of labor ahead. You remain by the oak tree, feeling the roughness of the bark against your shoulder. You breathe in deeply. The air smells of wet wool and morning fires. You feel a profound respect for this patience. In your own time, everything is instant, easily given and easily discarded. But here, love is a test of endurance. It is waiting for the well, waiting for Sunday Mass, waiting for the harvest festival. It is a seed buried deep in the snow, waiting for the thaw. You push yourself away from the tree and begin to walk again, following the path deeper into the village. The sounds of the day are rising, the clucking of chickens, the strike of a blacksmith's hammer, the laughter of children. But your mind stays with the silence of the well. You feel calm, grounded by the realization that beneath the hardship of this primitive life, there is a current of deep, resilient tenderness. You walk on, your footsteps slow and steady, blending into the heartbeat of the morning. You are a witness to the invisible, a traveler in a land where a glance is a poem and a ribbon is a promise. And as the village fully awakens around you, you carry that quiet peace with you, step by step, into the unfolding day. You move slowly away from the stone well, your footsteps making no sound against the packed earth. The morning air is still cool, carrying the scent of damp straw and wood smoke, a grounding aroma that pulls you deeper into the rhythm of this place. Here, time does not rush. It flows like thick honey, heavy and sweet, demanding patience from all who breathe it. As you wander toward the edge of the market stalls, which are only just beginning to open like sleepy flowers, you become acutely aware of the space between people. In your own time, space is often something to be conquered or filled, but here, the distance between two bodies is a tangible thing, charged with meaning. You come to a stop near a weaver's stall, leaning back against a rough wooden post. From this vantage point, you witness the silent theater of medieval affection. It is a world where love does not begin with bold declarations or rushing embraces. Instead, it starts with the eyes. You notice a young woman arranging heavy woolen cloaks on a table. Her movements are efficient, practiced, yet there is a tension in her shoulders, a waiting stillness. Across the narrow, muddy path, a young man stands by a blacksmith's forge. He is not working the bellows yet. He is simply standing, wiping grease from a heavy iron tool. He looks up. She looks up. The moment is brief, no longer than a heartbeat, but you feel the weight of it settle in your chest. It is a subtle, lingering glance shared between them, and you understand immediately that in a society of strict rules and modesty, a single look carries the weight of 1,000 spoken conversations. There is no smile, for that would be too dangerous. There is no wave, for that would invite scandal. There is only the locking of eyes, a profound communication that bridges the chasm of social prohibition. In that silence they trade entire histories. You sense the longing, the reassurance, and the shared burden of waiting.
You realize that here, silence is not an absence of sound. It is a complex emotional language, fluent and loud to those who know how to listen. You watch as the young man turns back to his work, but before he does, he shifts his position slightly, ensuring he remains within her line of sight. This is their routine. You understand that their love is built on these shared patterns, meetings that appear accidental to the village but are meticulously planned by the heart. A specific time at the water source, a particular pew in the church, a predictable path through the evening fields. Your gaze drifts to the table in front of the woman. Hidden beneath a stack of rough linens, you catch the glint of something small and personal. It is not gold, nor is it a precious gem, for such things are for kings and are cold to the touch. This is something far more valuable. It is a wooden comb. You can see, even from this distance, the care etched into it.
It has been carved by hand, likely by the young man across the way, whittled down during long nights by firelight. You imagine the hours he spent smoothing the wood, thinking of her hair, pouring his devotion into an object that she can hold in private. In this era, gifts are not measured by price, but by the time sacrificed to create them. You think of the other treasures that might be hidden in pockets or tucked into bodices throughout this village. A ribbon embroidered with a single imperfect flower, a small religious amulet made of tin given to protect a beloved from sickness, a piece of special bread made with white flour and honey, saved from a feast and given in secret. These are the currencies of affection here. They are promises made solid. As you continue your slow walk, you pass the open doors of the small stone church. The smell of incense and beeswax candles drifts out, mixing with the earthy morning air. You realize the immense role this building plays in their lives. It is the center of judgment, yes, the guardian of family honor and the source of the fear of scandal. But it is also a sanctuary for the heart. You imagine the Sunday Mass, the one time in the week when the entire village gathers. You can visualize the young lovers separated by the nave, kneeling on the cold stone floor. They cannot speak, they cannot touch, but during the prayers, when heads are bowed, eyes can wander. The church becomes a place of silent communion, where a look across the aisle sustains a soul for another week of labor. Walking further, you see a man sitting on a stool with a quill and parchment, a scribe offering his services to those who cannot read or write. A burly man, perhaps a farmhand, stands before him, twisting his cap in his hands, speaking in a low, hushed murmur. You pause, letting the scene wash over you. The farmhand is dictating a letter. You cannot hear the words, but you see the struggle in his face as he tries to articulate feelings that are usually kept locked away. He is trusting a stranger with his heart, paying a day's wages to send a message to someone far away, perhaps a woman in a neighboring village, or a wife he has left behind to find work. It is a testament to the durability of connection.
Even without the ability to write, the need to speak love finds a way. The sun climbs slightly higher, warming the back of your neck. The atmosphere is one of heavy, sweet melancholy. You are reminded of the concept of amor cortés, courtly love. Though these are simple villagers and not knights and ladies, the spirit is the same. It is the nobility of loving from a distance. It is the knight who loves a lady he can never marry because she is promised to another. It is the adoration of an ideal where the obstacle itself becomes part of the romance. You feel a deep empathy for the woman you saw earlier.
Perhaps she is betrothed to an older merchant, a match arranged for economic stability, a common reality that creates a landscape of impossible relationships. Her heart belongs to the blacksmith, but her duty belongs to her family. And so they wait. You feel the immense value of patience soaking into the earth around you. In your world, waiting is an inconvenience. Here, waiting is a proof of love. It is an active state, a vigil kept day after day, year after year. The young man waits for a chance to rise in station. The woman waits for a change in fortune. They wait for the brief moments when the watchful eyes of the elders are turned away. A soft sound catches your ear. Somewhere behind a garden wall, someone is humming a tune. It is not a loud performance, but a discreet serenade. It is a melody composed by a troubadour, carried from town to town, and now hummed by a lover as a signal. I am here. I am listening. The song blends with the rustle of the wind in the trees. You feel a profound sense of calm settle over your shoulders. There is something incredibly soothing about this resilience. Despite the hard life, the arranged marriages, the strict church laws, and the rigid class divides, tenderness survives. It grows in the cracks like moss on a stone wall, soft, green, and enduring. You take a deep breath, filling your lungs with the ancient air. You feel the slow, steady heartbeat of the village. It is a rhythm of endurance. You understand now that the romance of this time is not found in grand gestures, but in the sacredness of the small ones. A glance, a ribbon, a silence shared. You let this understanding wrap around you like a warm, heavy blanket. The world here is quiet, and within that quiet, there is a deep, abiding peace. You are safe here, observing the slow, eternal dance of human connection. The patience of the medieval heart becomes your own, calming your mind, slowing your thoughts, inviting you to rest in the certainty that love, no matter how silent, always endures. The sun has begun its slow descent behind the rolling hills, casting a long golden haze over the village. The day's work is done. You can feel the shift in the air, a gentle cooling that settles over the thatched roofs and the cobblestone paths. You find yourself walking toward the village green, a common space of grass and wildflowers that sits at the heart of this small world. Tonight there is a gathering. It is a seasonal celebration, perhaps marking the end of a harvest or the beginning of a holy week. The reason matters less than the atmosphere it creates. You find a quiet spot to sit, leaning back against the rough, sturdy bark of an ancient oak tree. From here you can see everything, yet you remain comfortably in the shadows, a silent witness to the life unfolding before you.
The air smells of wood smoke and roasted apples. Somewhere nearby, a musician begins to play. It is a simple melody, carried on a wooden flute and accompanied by the rhythmic tap of a small drum. The sound is not loud, but it is steady, a heartbeat that seems to draw the villagers out of their homes. You watch as the young people of the village begin to congregate. There is a palpable tension here, a delicate energy that hums beneath the casual conversations. You remember that in this time, love does not begin with bold declarations or public displays. It begins in silence. It thrives on the unspoken. You notice the way they stand. The men, in their tunics of wool and linen, hold themselves with a practiced casualness, though their eyes are always searching. The women, hair tucked beneath modest coverings or braided with simple ribbons, stand in clusters, their laughter soft and guarded. The music shifts, becoming a little livelier, inviting the circle to form.
This is the moment everyone has been waiting for. You watch as the circle dance begins. It is a tradition as old as the village itself, a communal ritual where the strict boundaries of daily life are allowed to soften just for a little while. Hand in hand, they form a great ring. You see the hesitation, then the acceptance. This is the beauty of the dance. It offers a fleeting moment of socially acceptable intimacy. In a world where a man and a woman cannot be seen alone together without risking honor and scandal, the dance is a sanctuary. Your eyes follow the movement of the circle. It turns slowly, a wheel of color and fabric. You focus on a pair of hands. A young man reaches out to take the hand of the woman next to him. You can see the gentleness in the gesture. It is not just a grip for balance, it is a conversation. His hand is rough, calloused from work in the fields or the forge. Her hand is smaller, perhaps stained with the juice of berries or the dust of flour. For the duration of the song, their skin touches. Warmth transfers from one palm to another. You realize that for them, this contact is electric. It is a promise. They do not look at each other directly. The village elders and the watchful matrons are seated on the benches nearby, their eyes sharp. To look too long would be to give away the secret. So they look forward, or they look at their feet moving in time with the drum, but you know that their entire awareness is focused on that single point of connection where their fingers interlace. You observe the subtle details that others might miss. You notice a small embroidered ribbon tied around the young man's wrist, half hidden by his sleeve. It is blue, stitched with a crude but careful thread. It is a gift, you realize, one of the valuable treasures of this era. Not gold, not jewels, but something made by hand in the quiet hours of the night. A token given in a rushed moment behind the market stalls or dropped near the village well. He wears it against his pulse. She knows it is there. The dance brings them closer, then pulls them apart as the circle expands and contracts. It is a metaphor for their lives, the push and pull of duty versus desire. You think about the constraints they face. Perhaps she is promised to another, a match arranged for the merging of lands or the settling of debts. Perhaps he is a second son with no inheritance, loving a woman he cannot technically afford to marry. Yet in this circle, they are simply two souls moving to the same rhythm. The music swells, the flute notes climbing higher into the twilight air. You see a look pass between them, a glance so fleeting it takes less than a second, but in that second, volumes are spoken. It is the language of the eyes. It says, "I am here. I am waiting. I endure." In this era, patience is the highest form of devotion. You feel a deep sense of respect for this patience. There is no instant gratification here. Love is a slow-burning fire, kept alive through winters and droughts, fed by the smallest scraps of hope. A shared song, a piece of special bread saved from a feast, a wooden comb carved by candlelight. The dance continues, hypnotic and repetitive. You feel your own breathing slow down, matching the sway of the figures on the green. The heavy, comforting blanket of night is fully descending now. Torches are lit,
casting warm, flickering orange light across the faces of the dancers. You watch the shadows stretch and dance along the ground, mimicking the people. The atmosphere is thick with a melancholy sweetness. It is the feeling of something beautiful that cannot last, which makes it all the more precious while it is happening. As the song nears its end, you see the hands squeeze tight for just a fraction of a moment longer than necessary. Then they let go. The circle breaks.
The social distance is re-established immediately. He steps back. She turns to her friends. The mask of indifference slides back into place. But you saw it. You witnessed the spark. The music fades into the ambient sounds of the evening, the chirping of crickets, the low murmur of voices, the crackle of the bonfires. You feel a profound sense of peace settle over you. There is something reassuring about the resilience of this affection. Despite the strict rules of the church, despite the fear of scandal, despite the walls of class and coin, the human heart finds a way. You sit there for a while longer, listening to the village settle down. The excitement of the dance evaporates, leaving behind a quiet contentment. You understand now that the restrictions of this world do not crush love, they distill it. They strip away the trivial, leaving only what is essential, what is true, and what is willing to wait. The darkness is gentle and welcoming.
You feel heavy, relaxed, and safe, wrapped in the timeless story of a glance, a touch, and a silence that speaks louder than words. The music of the village dance has faded into the deep velvet silence of the night. You find yourself moving away from the lingering warmth of the bonfire, stepping into the quiet sanctuary of a humble dwelling. Here, away from the prying eyes of the square, the air is still and smells faintly of dried lavender and wood smoke. On a rough-hewn table, illuminated by the soft, wavering glow of a single tallow candle, lies a collection of small items. They are modest things, easily overlooked by a hasty eye. But as you draw closer, you sense a weight to them, a gravity that has nothing to do with gold or gemstones. You reach out, your fingers hovering over these treasures, and you begin to understand the language of a time when love was a secret garden, tended in silence. You pick up a small wooden comb. It is simple, carved from a piece of ash or oak, yet the craftsmanship speaks of an aching devotion. You run your thumb over the teeth of the comb. They are perfectly smooth, sanded down not by tools, but by the patient, repetitive friction of a rough hand over many long evenings. You can almost see the maker sitting by a dying fire, whittling away the hours while the rest of the house sleeps. In this era, love does not begin with bold declarations or sonnets shouted from balconies. It begins in the quiet corners of daily life. It begins at the communal well, where the fetching of water becomes a sacred ritual of brief encounters. It begins in the crowded market, amidst the scent of spices and unwashed wool, where a hand might brush against another while reaching for an apple. You realize that this wooden comb was likely slipped into a palm during one of those fleeting moments. It was a gift of service, a promise that said, "I wish to care for you, even if I cannot be the one to braid your hair each morning." Beside the comb lies a wooden spoon. It is sturdy, practical, yet the handle is etched with intricate patterns of vines and leaves. You trace the carvings. They are delicate, requiring a steady hand and a held breath. In a world governed by strict hierarchies, where marriages are often contracts signed by fathers rather than unions of hearts, these objects are the currency of true emotion. A peasant cannot offer a dowry of land,
A young knight, bound by duty and lacking inheritance, cannot offer a castle, and so they offer time. They offer the labor of their hands. To carve a spoon is to imagine the loved one eating. It is a desire to be part of their sustenance, to be present at their table in spirit when societal rules forbid your presence in flesh. It is a humble domestic intimacy that transcends the need for grandeur. You set the spoon down gently, and your gaze shifts to a strip of fabric. It is a ribbon, perhaps the very same shade of blue you noticed earlier at the dance. You lift it to the light. The fabric is worn, soft as a sigh. Along the edges, tiny, uneven stitches form a pattern of stars or perhaps flowers. You imagine the young woman who embroidered this. You see her sitting by a window, stealing moments from her chores, her eyes straining in the dim light to pull the thread through. Embroidery is the writing of those who have never been taught to hold a quill. In these stitches, she has written her longing. She has poured her patience into the linen. To give such a thing is dangerous. If found by a stern father or a suspicious neighbor, it could mean scandal. The fear of dishonor is a high wall that surrounds every heart. And yet, the ribbon is here. It represents the thrill of the forbidden. In this age, love is often a form of rebellion. It is the silent defiance of a daughter promised to an older merchant, or a squire in love with a lady far above his station. The ribbon is a talisman.
When kept in a pocket or tied hidden beneath a sleeve, it acts as a physical connection to the beloved. It is a secret weight against the skin, a constant reminder that one is seen and known by another. You notice a small dried crust of bread wrapped in a linen cloth next to the ribbon. It seems an odd keepsake, but then the realization washes over you. Food is life. In times of scarcity, when the harvest is lean and the winter is long, to share one's portion is the ultimate sacrifice. This was not just bread, it was a portion of someone's survival, saved and given to another. It speaks of a protective love, a primal need to nurture. Take this, the gift says. I would rather go hungry than see you want. The silence of the room deepens, wrapping around you like a heavy, warm blanket. You look at these objects, the wood, the thread, the bread, and you feel the immense patience they required. There is no rush here. In this world, waiting is the primary occupation of the lover.
Waiting for the Sunday Mass to catch a glimpse of a profile in the pew across the aisle, waiting for the harvest festival, waiting for a letter, dictated to a scribe and carried by a trusted friend, hoping the words capture even a fraction of the feeling. You understand now that the constraints of this society, the heavy hand of the church, and the rigidity of class did not stifle love. Instead, they distilled it. They forced it into these small, dense vessels. Because they could not speak freely, their objects had to scream. Because they could not touch openly, their gifts had to carry the warmth of their hands. A sense of profound peace settles in your chest as you contemplate this. There is a beauty in this restraint. It makes every gesture deliberate. It makes every gift a solemn vow. You run your hand over the wooden spoon one last time, feeling the history in its grain. You think of the couple from the dance and the thousands like them whose stories are not written in history books but are preserved in these quiet artifacts. The candle flickers, casting long, dancing shadows against the stone walls. You feel safe here, guarding these secrets. The night is vast and protective. The world outside may be hard and demanding, full of rules and obligations, but in this small circle of candlelight,
the truth of the heart remains simple, tangible, and enduring. You let your eyes rest, feeling the slow, steady rhythm of the night, knowing that these promises, carved in wood and woven in thread, will outlast the silence. The wooden door of the humble dwelling closes softly behind you, leaving the scent of dried herbs and old bread inside. You step out into the cooling air of the twilight. The village is settling into a quiet rhythm, the kind of stillness that arrives when the work of the day is done, but the sleep of the night has not yet taken hold. You move effortlessly through the cobblestone streets, your presence like a whisper, unnoticed and weightless. The shadows stretch long and thin across the ground, reaching out like fingers to touch the stone walls of the houses. Here, in this space between day and night, you are merely an observer, a witness to the ancient, rigid dance of courtship. You find yourself drawn to the edge of a small square where the architecture of the town dictates the flow of life. You stand in the shadows, blending with the darkening corners, to watch. Across the way, a heavy oak door stands slightly ajar. It frames a young woman. She is not leaning out, for that would be improper, but she stands just inside the threshold, visible enough to be seen by someone looking for her, yet hidden enough to claim she is merely enjoying the evening breeze. Behind her, deep in the gloom of the main room, sits an older woman, an aunt, perhaps, or a mother, the chaperone. She is sewing by the light of a single tallow candle, her head down, but her presence is a solid, unmoving wall. You can feel the weight of her authority even from here. She is the guardian of honor, the keeper of the family's reputation. Then you hear the rhythmic sound of boots on stone. A young man approaches. He does not run. He does not stride with the confidence of one who owns the street. He walks with a measured, deliberate pace. He is wearing a tunic of rough wool, dusty from the fields or the workshop. He carries the weariness of labor, but his eyes are bright, fixed on that open doorway. He stops. He does not cross the threshold. To enter would be a scandal, a breach of the intricate rules that bind this society together. Instead, he stands in the street, separated from her by 3 feet of stone and a universe of social expectation. You watch the way they look at one another. In this era, love does not begin with words. It begins with the shared knowledge of a routine. Perhaps they saw each other at the market earlier, amidst the noise of vendors and livestock, where a lingering glance over a basket of apples was the only conversation allowed. Perhaps they passed each other at the church, where the silence of prayer provided a cover for the silent prayer of their own hearts. Now, in the safety of the doorway, the conversation begins. It is quiet, almost murmuring. You strain to hear, but the words are simple, almost mundane. He asks about her family's health. She comments on the coming rain. But you understand, as you watch the softening of their expressions, that the words are merely a vessel. The true language here is tone and cadence. It is the silence between the sentences where the emotion lives. You notice the tension in their posture. They are rigid, careful not to lean too close, careful not to let their hands brush against one another. The chaperone inside clears her throat, a dry, sharp sound that echoes slightly.
The young woman straightens her spine instantly. The fear of scandal is a tangible thing here, a cold wind that blows even on warm nights. In a world where marriages are often arranged, contracts signed between fathers to merge lands or secure cattle, this stolen moment in a doorway is an act of quiet rebellion. It is the manifestation of true affection struggling against the current of duty.
You see the young man glance around, checking the street. It is empty, save for you, the unseen ghost in the shadows. He reaches into his tunic. He does not pull out a jewel or a bag of coins. Such things are for the wealthy, for the lords and ladies in the high castles who play at courtly love with grand gestures. Here, in the village, love is built on sacrifice. He produces a small object. It is a ribbon. It is embroidered with a simple pattern of vines, the thread slightly uneven, suggesting he bartered for it, or perhaps a sister helped him make it. It is a humble thing.
He holds it out, not crossing the line of the doorframe. She reaches for it, her hand trembling slightly. Their fingers do not touch, or if they do, it is so fleeting it is like the brush of a moth's wing. She takes the ribbon and hides it quickly within the folds of her apron. This gift is worth more than gold. In a life where she might be promised to a man she does not know, a man chosen for his trade or his standing, this ribbon is a talisman of choice. It is a physical piece of his devotion, a promise that he sees her not as a bargaining chip, but as a soul. You watch as they stand there for a moment longer. There is no kissing, no embracing. The public display of affection is forbidden, a shame that would stain her name forever. Instead, they rely on the amor cortés, the courtly love of the common people. It is a love defined by distance and waiting. He is like a knight, though he wears no armor. He serves her through his patience.
He endures the silence, the separation, and the watchful eyes of the community. His heroism is not found on a battlefield, but in his ability to wait, week after week, for these brief minutes in a doorway. She says something low, a farewell. The candle inside the house flickers, and the chaperone calls out a name. The time is up. The ritual must end before it draws suspicion. He nods, a short, respectful bow of his head. He turns and walks away, back into the deepening night. He does not look back. To look back would be to reveal too much. She stays at the door for a heartbeat longer, her hand pressed over the pocket of her apron where the ribbon lies. Then she steps back. The heavy wood door swings shut. The sound of the latch clicking into place is final and loud in the quiet street. You are left alone in the shadows again. You feel a profound sense of melancholy, but also a strange warmth.
You realize that the lack of privacy, the constant surveillance of the church and the family, has distilled their love into something incredibly potent. Because they cannot speak freely, every word they do say carries the weight of a vow. Because they cannot touch, the gift of a simple ribbon becomes a sacred relic. You walk slowly away from the house, moving deeper into the village. You pass a fountain where the water trickles endlessly into a stone basin. You imagine the meetings that happen here at dawn, the women filling their pitchers, the brief exchanges of news, the subtle signals sent across the water. You pass the church, its stone walls towering and silent. You think of the letters that are never written because neither of them knows how to write. Instead, they must rely on memory, on the echo of a voice, or perhaps pay a scribe to dictate a letter, a risky venture that puts their secrets in the hands of a stranger.
The air around you feels thick with these invisible threads of connection. You realize that in this time, patience is not just a virtue, it is the very substance of love. The waiting is the proof. If he waits for her, if she keeps his ribbon hidden for years while the families negotiate or while he works to save a dowry, that is the testament. You feel the heaviness of the night pressing down, a blanket of quiet. The world here is slow. There is no rushing this process. It is a slow burn, a candle that must be shielded from the wind. You continue your walk, the image of the closed door and the hidden ribbon lingering in your mind. You understand now that the rigidity of the rituals does not extinguish the fire. It contains it, making it burn hotter, deeper, and with a desperate, beautiful intensity. The silence of the village is not empty. It is full of secrets, full of promises kept in the dark, waiting for the light. You turn away from the lingering silhouettes of the young lovers in the lane, leaving their secret joy to the protection of the shadows. The night air has grown cooler, settling over the village like a heavy, damp cloak. You feel the chill of the mist against your skin, a stark contrast to the warmth that bloomed in your chest just moments ago. Drawn by a different kind of light, you drift toward a sturdy cottage near the center of the settlement. The windows are small, covered in oiled parchment that glows with a deep amber hue, suggesting a fire that has been burning steadily for hours. You move through the wall as if it were nothing more than a veil of smoke. Inside, the atmosphere is thick and warm. The air smells of dried sage hanging from the rafters, old timber, and the savory, lingering scent of a stew that was eaten long ago. The room is quiet, save for the rhythmic popping of the logs in the hearth and the low, murmuring voices of the people seated at the heavy oak table. You settle into the corner, an unseen guest in this intimate sanctuary. Two couples sit opposite one another. They are older, their faces etched with the lines of many winters and the sun of many harvests. These are not the faces of flushed youthful infatuation. These are faces of endurance. You listen to the timbre of their voices. They are speaking in hushed tones, not to hide a secret romance, but to respect the gravity of their business. On the table between them lies not a bouquet of flowers, but a map drawn in charcoal on a scrap of leather. Beside it sits a loaf of dense, dark bread, a gesture of hospitality and a symbol of the sustenance they act to secure. You realize you are witnessing a negotiation. A betrothal is being arranged. In the village, marriage is often a contract of survival. While the poets and troubadours sing of hearts intertwining, these parents speak of fields, of water rights, and of the strength of bloodlines. You watch the father on the left. His hands are rough, calloused from the plow, resting heavily on the wood of the table. He speaks of a strip of land near the river, a place where the soil is rich and dark. He offers this not as a prize, but as a promise that his daughter's future husband will have the means to feed a family. The mother across from him nods slowly. Her eyes are sharp, calculating, not out of greed, but out of care. She asks about the roof of the barn, about the health of the livestock. She is ensuring that her son will not struggle alone when the snows come. There is a profound, quiet love in this pragmatism. You see that for them, love is not a spark, but a foundation. It is the stone wall that keeps the wind out. It is the stockpile of grain that lasts through the famine. The conversation pauses. The father reaches into a pouch at his belt and withdraws a small object. He places it on the table with great reverence.
It is a wooden comb, carved from cherry wood, polished smooth by years of handling. It is simple, unadorned, yet beautiful in its utility. For her, he says softly. The gift is humble. In this time, affections and promises are rarely sealed with gold or gems, for such things are the domain of kings. Here, value is found in utility and craftsmanship. A hand-embroidered ribbon, a wooden comb, a small religious amulet made of tin. The mother of the prospective groom reaches out and touches the comb. She smiles, a fleeting, weary expression that softens the hard lines of her face. She understands the sacrifice involved in giving away something so well made. You notice the absence of the bride and groom. They are likely asleep in the loft above, or perhaps waiting in separate houses, aware that their futures are being woven together by the voices downstairs. There is a heavy sense of destiny in the room.
In this world, the individual will often bows to the collective good of the family. The honor of the name is a tangible weight carried on the shoulders of every child. You feel the tension between the desire for happiness and the necessity of duty. Yet, as you listen to the parents, you do not sense cruelty. You sense fear. Fear of a bad harvest, fear of illness, fear of a world that does not forgive mistakes. By arranging this union, they are building a fortress against that fear. They speak of the church and when the banns might be read. The role of the priest is central here. The blessing of God is as necessary as the dowry of sheep. The fire in the hearth settles into a bed of glowing coals, casting long, dancing shadows against the walls. The light is soft, lulling your senses. The voices drop even lower, becoming a soothing drone. They discuss the wedding feast. It will not be lavish, but there will be music. Perhaps a song composed by a traveling troubadour, paid for with a warm meal and a place to sleep by the fire. They speak of patience. The betrothal may last for a year or more, a time of waiting, a time for the young couple to learn the rhythm of each other's lives from a distance. You think of the courtly love you have heard of, knights loving ladies from afar, a love defined by distance and silence. Here, in this peasant cottage, that distance is enforced not by chivalric code, but by propriety and the watchful eyes of the village. The father pours a small amount of wine from an earthen jug into 4 wooden cups. The liquid is dark and catches the firelight. They raise their cups. There is no clinking of glass, only the soft thud of wood meeting wood. A pact is made. To the future, the woman whispers. To survival, the man replies. You watch them drink. In their eyes you see a different kind of romance. It is the romance of continuity. They are stitching the edges of their families together to create a larger, stronger tapestry. The scene feels timeless. You are witnessing the bedrock of civilization, the quiet, unglamorous decisions made late at night that ensure the sun will rise on a stable home tomorrow. The warmth of the room begins to make your eyelids heavy. The smell of the wood smoke is comforting, a scent that speaks of safety and shelter. You watch the mothers begin to clear the table, their movements synchronized and efficient. They treat the map and the wooden comb with the same care they would give a holy relic. The fathers stand by the fire, staring into the embers, perhaps thinking of their own youths, or perhaps simply resting their tired backs. The silence that follows the negotiation is not empty. It is a language of its own. It speaks of relief. It speaks of a burden shared. You feel a deep sense of peace settle over the cottage. The anxiety of the unknown has been quelled by the structure of tradition. As the candle on the table gutters and fades, the room is swallowed by a gentle darkness, illuminated only by the dying hearth. You drift backward, through the wall, back into the cool embrace of the village night, but you carry the warmth of that cottage with you. You understand now that while the ribbon given in the lane was a whisper of the heart, This agreement in the kitchen is the heartbeat of the village itself, steady, pragmatic, and enduring. The night deepens and the village sleeps, held together by these invisible threads of promise and duty. The morning air greets you with a scent that is different from the usual wood smoke and damp earth. Today, the village smells of crushed stems and bruised petals, a green and vibrant perfume that hangs low in the mist. You step out from the shelter of the eaves, leaving behind the quiet intimacy of the betrothal negotiations, and find yourself immersed in a wider communal awakening. The sun is not yet high, merely a pale wash of gold filtering through the canopy of the surrounding forest, but the village is already alive with a hushed, purposeful energy. You stand still for a moment, letting your eyes adjust to this shifting scene. It is a day of union. The village is transforming itself, shedding its daily skin of labor and hardship to put on a cloak of celebration and ancient superstition. You watch as the women and children move like a gentle tide toward the meadows at the edge of the hamlet. They are gathering the wild bounty of the season, their hands moving deftly through the tall grass. You follow them at a slow, drifting pace, your boots making no sound on the soft, beaten path. They are collecting herbs, not for cooking today, but for warding. You see bundles of rosemary, its sharp, pine-like scent piercing the cool air. It is the herb of remembrance, you recall, carried to ensure that the couple will never forget who they were before they became one. You see lavender, dusty, purple, and soothing, gathered to bring peace to a household that does not yet exist. There is a gravity to their work. You notice an older woman instructing a young girl on exactly which sprigs of rue to pluck. The rue is bitter, a guard against envy and the evil eye. In this medieval world, love is a fragile thing, constantly under siege by invisible spirits and the harshness of fate. The wedding preparations are not just decoration, they are a spiritual fortification. You walk back toward the center of the village, carrying the image of those wildflowers in your mind. The houses, usually brown and gray against the landscape, are beginning to bloom. On the wooden posts of the doorways, you see the flash of color. Ribbons. They are not made of silk. Such luxury is far beyond this place, but are strips of linen and wool, dyed in colors derived from onion skins, woad, and madder root. Deep yellows, soft blues, and rusty reds flutter in the gentle breeze. You step closer to examine one. It has been embroidered by hand, a labor of patience that speaks of hours spent by candlelight. These are the gifts of the era, not objects of gold, but objects of time. As you wander deeper into the heart of the preparations, you begin to notice the subtle, silent language of the younger generation. The prompt tells of love starting not with words, but with shared routines, and you see it happening right before you. Near the communal well, a young man is filling heavy wooden buckets to help wash the stone pavement of the square. A young woman stands nearby, holding a basket of hawthorn branches. They do not speak. In this world, privacy is a rare luxury, and public gestures are dangerous things. Yet you catch the moment their eyes meet. It is a brief, electric connection, lasting no longer than a heartbeat. He pauses in his work, the water rippling in the bucket. She slows her step. There is a profound longing in that silence. It is the enamoramiento, the falling in love that exists in the spaces between duties. You realize that for them, this wedding is not just a celebration for others, but a mirror of their own silent hopes. They are bound by the strictures of family honor and the need for patience, waiting for a harvest or a dowry that might make their own union possible years from now. You move on, respecting their quiet, almost invisible courtship. The sound of a lute drifts from the tavern yard, a slow, meandering melody. A traveling troubadour is practicing for the evening, his fingers dancing over the strings. The music weaves through the village, binding the disparate activities together. It is a song of courtly love, of knights and ladies, a high romantic ideal that contrasts with the earthy, practical reality of the village. Yet, as you listen, you see the villagers pause in their sweeping and hanging of garlands. The music elevates their toil, lending a touch of nobility to their rustic lives. You approach the long tables being set up on the green. Here the special bread is being laid out. You can smell it, rich with honey and perhaps a pinch of saffron or dried fruit, ingredients saved for months for this specific day. The loaves are braided, symbolizing the intertwining of two lives, two families, two destinies. You watch an elder place a small wooden amulet at the head of the table. It is a simple carving of a saint, worn smooth by generations of thumbs. It is a reminder that the Church watches over this union, that the vows to be spoken are sacred. But right next to the saint, someone has scattered a circle of salt. Faith and folklore sit side by side here, neither negating the other. The atmosphere is thick with a specific kind of nostalgia. You feel the weight of the community's collective memory. Every adult here remembers their own day, or the day they hope for, or the day they lost. You see a woman adjusting a garland on a post, her expression distant and soft. Is she thinking of a forbidden love, a knight who passed through once, or a neighbor promised to another? In the silence of her work, her secret history remains safe. The light begins to change, shifting from the pale morning haze to the clearer, brighter light of midday. The village has transformed. It is no longer just a collection of cottages, it is a stage set for a rite of passage. You find a quiet spot near the edge of the square, leaning back against the rough bark of an ancient oak tree. From here, you can see it all. You see the ribbons dancing like spirits in the wind. You smell the complex bouquet of wildflowers, baking bread, and old wood. You feel the anticipation vibrating in the ground beneath your feet. There is a deep sense of peace in witnessing this. You understand now that the fortress against fear you sensed in the betrothal cottage has expanded. It is not just the couple who builds the fortress, it is the entire village. They gather the herbs to protect the couple, they bake the bread to nourish them, they sing the songs to give them dreams. The wedding is a defiance of the darkness, a collective assertion that life, despite its brutality, is worth celebrating. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of the village wash over you. The distant laughter of children, the clink of a bucket, the strum of the lute. The rhythm of the day is slow and steady, a heartbeat that has continued for centuries. You are part of it now, a silent witness to the enduring, quiet power of community and the timeless, patient rituals of love. The preparation is nearly complete. The stage is set, and as the sun climbs higher, warming your face, you feel a heavy, comfortable drowsiness, a sense of perfect placement in a world that knows exactly what it must do to survive and to love. You stand now within the embrace of the churchyard, where the grass is soft beneath your feet and the ancient yew trees cast long, protective shadows. The air here feels different, still, expectant, and heavy with the scent of old stone and damp earth. You watch as the village gathers, a sea of wool and linen, forming a quiet semicircle around the heavy wooden doors of the church. The procession has ended and the moment of binding has arrived, but you notice with a keen sense of history that they do not enter the sanctuary yet. They stop at the threshold. This is the custom, the way it has always been done. The porch of the church, with its worn stone archway, serves as the bridge between the open sky of the world and the sacred gloom of the altar. It is here, in the open air, witnessed by God and neighbor alike, that the contract of hearts must be sealed. You observe the young couple standing before the priest. They are close enough to touch, yet a respectful distance remains between them, a final remnant of the courtship that brought them here. You think of how their love began, not with grand declarations or written sonnets, for few here can write, but with the quiet language of presence. It started with glances exchanged across the market stalls, the shy acknowledgement of a shared routine. You imagine the mornings they passed each other at the village well, the silent nod as he returned from the fields and she looked up from her washing. In this world, love is a slow-growing plant, rooted in patience and watered by the simple reliability of being near. The groom shifts his weight, his hands clasping and unclasping at his sides. He wears his best tunic, brushed clean of the field's dust. You can see the nervousness in the set of his shoulders, the weight of the promise he is about to make. He looks at her, and for a moment the crowd seems to vanish for him.
You sense the depth of his regard, a feeling that mirrors the ideals of Amor Cortez, where a knight serves his lady with silent devotion. Though he is no knight and she no high-born dame, the nobility of his gaze is undeniable. He has waited for this. In a life dictated by the seasons and the demands of the harvest, waiting is the ultimate proof of devotion. The bride stands with a quiet dignity, her eyes fixed on the priest, though you notice her fingers tracing the texture of the ribbon tied at her waist. It is one of the gifts you saw earlier, a simple length of fabric, perhaps embroidered by her own hand or given by him in a moment of brave discretion. In this time, gifts are rarely gold or gems. They are wooden combs carved by firelight, small amulets of tin to ward off sickness, or a loaf of fine bread shared during a festival. These small tokens carry the weight of 1,000 words. The priest raises his hand and a hush falls over the assembly. The wind rustles the ivy clinging to the stone walls, a natural whisper joining the liturgy. Here at the door of the church, the priest's voice intones, low and rhythmic, we ask for the free consent of these two souls. You listen as they speak. Their voices are not loud, but they carry clearly in the silence. They do not speak of abstract romance, but of life, of labor, of the reality of survival. The vows are a binding of bed and board, a promise to share the burden of the plow and the warmth of the hearth. You realize that in this village, marriage is not merely a union of two people, it is the merging of two paths of survival. It is a fortress built against the cold, a partnership that says, I will not let you face the winter alone. You watch the groom reach into his pouch. He produces a ring. It is not diamond or pearl, but a simple band, perhaps silver or even iron, forged by the village smith. He takes her hand. The skin of their palms meets, rough against soft, calloused by work, warm with life. As he slides the ring onto her finger, he pauses at each joint, reciting the names of the Trinity before settling it at the base of her finger. The gesture is slow, deliberate. It is a public claiming, a visible sign that the time of waiting is over. The fear of scandal, the pressure of family honor, the strict rules of social conduct, all these dissolve in this moment of sanctioned unity. You look at the faces of the villagers watching them. You see the elders nodding with approval, remembering their own days at the threshold. You see the younger ones watching with wide eyes, perhaps hiding secrets of their own,
a forbidden affection for someone of a different station, or a love that must wait for a better harvest. You sense the complex web of emotions that surrounds a wedding, the joy of a new beginning, tinged with the melancholic understanding of how hard life can be. The bride speaks her consent. Her voice is steady, anchored by the community that surrounds her. She promises to be bonny and buxom, gentle and obedient, but you know this obedience is a two-way street of mutual reliance. She is promising to keep the home fire burning, to manage the stores, to be the keeper of their shared sustenance. The priest wraps his stole around their joined hands. The knot is tied. The visual is powerful. Cloth binding flesh, the church binding the couple. What God has joined, the priest murmurs, let no man put asunder. A collective breath seems to release from the crowd. The tension of the ceremony softens into a feeling of profound peace. You feel it too, a settling in your chest. The ritual has done its work. It has taken the chaotic, fragile energy of human emotion and poured it into a vessel of order and tradition. They are no longer two separate entities navigating the dangers of the world alone. They are a unit. They have crossed the threshold of intent. You watch as the groom looks at his bride, and for the first time, a small, relieved smile breaks the solemnity of his face. It is a private signal, a silent language they have perfected over months of stolen glances. It says, "We have done it. We are safe." The scene before you is timeless. The gray stone, the soft light filtering through the trees, the clasped hands. You feel a deep, resonant connection to this moment. It reminds you that across centuries, the human heart seeks the same things: safety, understanding, and a hand to hold in the dark. The priest steps back, gesturing toward the open doors of the church behind him. Now and only now are they invited to enter the sanctuary for the Mass. But the true work, the binding of their lives, happened here, on the doorstep, under the open sky, with the wind and the village as their witnesses. You linger on this image of them standing at the door, the threshold between their past and their future. The air is cool and still. The world feels steady. You breathe in the scent of rain and old stone, feeling the slow, comforting rhythm of the village pulse around you, lulling you into a state of quiet, observant rest. The celebration behind you begins to soften, its edges blurring into a gentle hum of distant laughter and the rhythmic clapping of hands. You feel a pull to drift away from the center of the village, leaving the warmth of the communal fires for the cool, quiet embrace of the periphery. You move slowly, your steps making no sound on the packed earth, guided by an instinct to seek the solitude of the twilight. You walk past the last row of thatched cottages, where the scent of roasted meat gives way to the aroma of damp moss and pine. Here, the world feels different. The strict order of the village, with its clear laws, its public vows, and its defined roles, begins to dissolve into the shadows of the ancient forest. You find yourself standing near the tree line. There is an old stone well here, a common meeting place for daily chores, but at this hour it stands silent. The heavy canopy of the oaks filters the fading light, painting the ground in shades of deep indigo and charcoal.
In this quiet space, you notice movement. It is not the wind, but the stillness of two figures who have found a way to be together without truly being together. You stop, observing them from the safety of the dusk, understanding immediately that you are witnessing something sacred and secret. You see a young man standing by the trunk of a massive oak. He wears the simple, rough tunic of a laborer, or perhaps a low-ranking guard, his posture rigid with a disciplined patience.
He is not hiding, yet he blends perfectly with the stillness of the wood. He is waiting. You can feel the weight of his waiting, a testament to a devotion that requires no audience. Moments later, a young woman appears. She carries a basket, ostensibly searching for late-blooming herbs or perhaps collecting kindling, a valid excuse to be away from the festivities. She moves with a deliberate slowness, her eyes scanning the surroundings, not with fear, but with a practiced caution. They do not run to each other. There is no dramatic embrace. In this world where honor is a tangible wall and the eyes of the community are ever watchful, love is not a rush of action, but a discipline of restraint. You watch as they stand several feet apart. The silence between them is thick, woven with emotions that cannot be spoken aloud. You realize that their love does not begin with words. It lives entirely in their eyes. They look at one another with a hunger and a reverence that transcends the need for speech. It is the language of silence, profound and heavy. You notice the small, subtle movements that replace touch, the way he shifts his weight toward her, the way she tilts her head, exposing the curve of her neck to the cooling air, a gesture of trust and vulnerability. This is the courtly dance of the shadows, a relationship built on the routine of stolen glances in markets, across church aisles, and here at the edge of the wild. The young man reaches into his belt. He does not produce gold or gems. Such things are for the lords and ladies in the high castles, and even then they are often part of a contract, not a romance. Instead, he holds out something small, cupped in his rough hands. You drift closer in your mind's eye to see the gift. It is a comb whittled from pale wood. It is simple, humble, but you can see the hours of labor etched into it. You imagine him sitting by a fire on lonely nights, carving the wood with a knife, smoothing it with a stone, pouring all his unspoken adoration into this single, functional object. She steps forward, bridging the gap for just a fleeting second. Her hand brushes his as she takes the comb. That singular point of contact seems to spark through the twilight, more intimate than any kiss. She quickly slips the gift into the folds of her apron, hiding it away. It is a treasure not because of its cost, but because it is a promise. It is a tangible piece of him that she can keep. You understand the tragedy and the beauty of this scene. She is likely promised to another, a marriage arranged for survival, for the merging of fields or the settling of debts, much like the wedding you witnessed earlier. The laws of the village are absolute. The path of her life was likely decided before she was born. And he, perhaps a second son with no land, or a man bound to service, can offer her nothing but his heart and his patience. He loves her in the manner of the old knights, a silent guardian of an impossible affection. He does not demand, he endures. You watch them linger for a moment longer. The sun has dipped fully below the horizon now, and the blue hour is settling in. The risk of discovery grows with every passing shadow. They do not say goodbye. To speak the word would be to acknowledge the separation. Instead, she simply nods, a small, resolute dip of her chin. He bows his head in return, a gesture of respect that elevates this secret meeting to something holy. She turns and walks back toward the village, her step perhaps a little lighter, the secret weight of the wooden comb pressed against her side. He watches her go, not moving until she has completely disappeared into the gathering gloom. Only then does he exhale, a long breath that seems to release the tension of the encounter into the forest air. You feel a wave of melancholy wash over you, but it is a gentle, sweet sadness. It is the acknowledgement of a love that burns brighter because it is contained. It is the romance of the impossible, the longing that can never be fully satiated and therefore never fades. The forest accepts their secret. The trees, ancient and unjudging, absorb the memory of their meeting. You feel the deep, resonating peace of the woods wrapping around you. The world here is slow and forgiving. You drift backward, leaving the young man to his thoughts. The image of the two lovers fades into the tapestry of the night, becoming just another story held within the quiet earth. You feel heavy with relaxation, your mind quieting as you appreciate the simple, enduring power of patience and the silent language of the heart. The darkness is soft now, a comforting blanket. The village is far away, the wedding is a distant memory, and all that remains is the steady, rhythmic breathing of the forest, watching over the secrets hidden in its shadows. You are at rest, suspended in the timeless quiet of a love that asks for nothing but to exist.
The ancient forest, with its secrets of forbidden trysts and silent partings, gradually recedes behind you. You walk slowly away from the tree line, your feet finding a worn, earthen path that leads back toward the outskirts of the settlement. The air here is colder, biting at your cheeks with the promise of deep winter, but there is a scent on the wind that draws you forward, the smell of wood smoke. It is an earthy, grounding aroma that speaks of safety and survival. Ahead, nestled in the lee of a rolling hill, stands a modest cottage. It is not a grand manor nor a merchant's tall house. It is a home of stone and thatch, low to the ground as if hugging the earth for warmth. A single window glows with a faint amber light, a beacon in the encroaching gray of the evening. You feel drawn to this light, not as an intruder, but as a silent witness to the life that dwells within. You approach the door and pass through it as easily as a thought, entering the sanctuary of the home.
The interior is small and dim, illuminated only by the hearth in the center of the room, and a single tallow candle melting slowly on a rough-hewn table. The air here is thick with the history of daily living. The scent of dried herbs hanging from the rafters, the musk of wool, and the sharp tang of burning oak. You stand in the corner, embraced by the shadows, and observe. A man and a woman are there. They are no longer the young, breathless lovers you saw at the forest's edge. Time has etched its passage onto their faces, fine lines around their eyes that speak of years spent squinting against the sun in the fields and the smoke of the fire. Their clothes are simple, mended with care, patches of fabric telling stories of thrift and necessity. This is the reality of life after the wedding. The festivities, the ribbons, and the public declarations are distant memories now. What remains is something quieter, heavier, and infinitely more profound. You watch the man as he enters from a back door, carrying a bundle of firewood. His hands are rough, calloused from labor, his shoulders stooped slightly under the weight of the day. He does not announce his arrival, he simply moves to the hearth, the center of their world. The woman is there, kneeling on the flagstones. She does not look up immediately, but her body shifts, making space for him without a word. It is a dance of routine, perfected over thousands of days. In the medieval world, love does not always manifest in sonnets or serenades beneath a balcony. Here, in the quiet sanctity of the home, love is the shared struggle to keep the cold at bay. You watch them tend the fire together. The flames have burned low, reducing to a bed of glowing, pulse-red embers. It is a precarious thing, this warmth. If it dies, the night will conquer the home. The man places a log carefully onto the embers. He does not throw it. He places it with the precision of a craftsman.
The woman leans forward, using a rusted iron poker to adjust the airflow. They move in unison, a single entity with two pairs of hands. There is a profound silence between them, but it is not empty. It is a language of its own, an emotional shorthand developed through seasons of hardship and harvest. You notice the way he pauses to look at her hands as she works. It is a brief glance, stripped of the desperate hunger of new romance, replaced by a deep, abiding recognition. He knows the rhythm of her breathing. She knows the sound of his step. The log catches. A small tongue of blue and yellow flame licks upward, illuminating their faces. The crisis of the cold is averted for another hour. They stand slowly, their joints popping in the quiet room. The woman moves to the table, where a humble meal waits. In this era, food is not merely sustenance, it is a testament to providence and patience. You see her unwrap a cloth to reveal a loaf of bread.
It is not the white bread of the nobility, but a dark, dense loaf. Yet she handles it with reverence. You notice she slices a piece, the pan especial, the portion reserved for the worker who has spent his energy in the wind. She pushes it toward him. He looks at the bread, then at her. He takes a knife and cuts a small piece of hard cheese, a luxury perhaps saved for a holy day or a moment of need, and places it on her side of the board. These are the gifts of their time, not gold, not jewels, but the sacrifice of a savory bite given to the other. It is a promise, not spoken, but eaten. I will sustain you so that you may sustain me. They sit on the wooden bench, side by side. Before they eat, they bow their heads. The role of the church is ever present, a silent third member of their marriage. They murmur a grace, their voices low and blending together. It is a moment of gratitude, not for abundance, but for sufficiency.
As they eat in the comfortable silence, your eyes wander the room. You see the artifacts of their journey. Hanging on a peg near the door is a faded embroidered ribbon, perhaps given at a fair decades ago. It is frayed now, losing its color, but it remains displayed. On a shelf sits a small wooden comb, similar to the one you saw in the forest, but this one has lost a tooth and has been polished smooth by years of handling. These objects are the amulets of their devotion. They are reminders of the patience it took to build this life. You understand now that the happily ever after is not a state of perpetual bliss, but a state of perpetual endurance. The wind howls outside, rattling the heavy wooden shutters. The noise is sharp and hostile, highlighting the peace within. The couple does not flinch. They have weathered many winters.
They know that the honor of their family lies not in grand battles, but in the quiet dignity of surviving together, of paying their tithes, of raising their children, of holding their heads up in the village square. The meal is finished. The man rises and moves behind the woman. For a moment, he rests his hand on her shoulder. It is a heavy, warm touch. She reaches up and covers his hand with hers. The gesture lasts only a second, a fleeting intersection of souls, but it carries the weight of a cathedral. This is the love that the troubadours rarely sing of, because it lacks the drama of the chase. It is the love of the hearth. It is the love that warms the stones of the floor. You watch as they prepare for rest. The day's labor is done. The fire is banked, covered with ash to keep the coals alive until morning, the eternal task of preservation. As the room darkens, leaving only the soft red glow from the fireplace, you feel a deep, settling heaviness in your own limbs.
The scene before you, this modest, drafty home, feels incredibly safe. The resilience of this couple, their silent understanding,
acts as a blanket against the worries of the world. You realize that while the young lovers in the forest burned with a bright, terrifying flame, this couple glows with the steady, unyielding heat of the embers. And in the heart of winter, it is the embers that ensure survival. You drift backward, away from the table, away from the fire. The image of the two figures sitting close together in the semi-darkness begins to blur. The sound of the wind outside becomes a rhythmic lullaby, a reminder of the shelter you have found. Peace settles over you, as thick and comforting as wool. You are ready to rest, knowing that the fire is tended and the night is held at bay. The shadows within the cottage have lengthened, stretching across the rough-hewn floorboards like the slow hands of a clock.
You are still resting in the corner, wrapped in the comforting invisibility of your observation, feeling the heavy, grounding warmth of the hearth. The earlier meal has ended, the wooden trenchers scraped clean and set aside, but the evening has taken a turn toward a quieter, more fragile intimacy. You notice that the old man has not returned to his carving. Instead, he lies upon the straw pallet in the alcove, his breathing slightly labored, a rasping sound that speaks of the damp winter air settling into his chest. It is not a frantic scene, nor one of panic. It is simply the reality of this life, where the body is as weathered as the timber walls. You watch the woman move. Her pace is slow, deliberate, and steeped in a lifetime of knowledge. She does not call for a physician, for there are none to be found in these woods, nor does she weep. She simply acts. Her love is not a thing of grand proclamations, but of practical, rhythmic movement. She moves to the hearth, where a small iron pot hangs over the dying embers. You smell the change in the air, no longer just the scent of wood smoke and stew, but something sharper, medicinal and earthy. Dried sage, perhaps, or hyssop, gathered from the garden months ago and dried for a night exactly like this. As she stirs the infusion, you find yourself thinking of the history that lives between them. You realize that their love likely did not begin with the flowery poetry of courtly romances you might have heard of, tales of knights and inaccessible ladies. For people of the soil, love began much more quietly. You imagine them years ago. You can almost see the ghosts of their younger selves standing in the room. Their courtship would not have been spoken in sonnets, but in glances, a look shared across a crowded market stall, or a moment of silent acknowledgement while drawing water from the village fountain. You understand now that in this time, silence was a language all its own. To look at someone and hold their gaze was a promise more binding than ink on parchment. The woman dips a cloth into a basin of cool water. She wrings it out, her hands strong and veined, hands that have worked the earth and kneaded dough 1,000 times. She walks to the pallet and sits beside him. You watch as she places the cool cloth on his forehead. The man sighs, a sound of immense relief, and his eyes flutter open to look at her. In that look, you see the remnants of the gifts they might have exchanged when they were young. Not gold or jewels, but the treasures of their station. Perhaps he once carved her a simple wooden comb, smoothing the teeth with a stone until they were perfect. Perhaps she gave him a ribbon she had embroidered herself, hiding it in his tunic as a talisman against the hardships of the world. These were the gifts that mattered, small, tangible proofs that someone was waiting for you. She lifts his head gently, bringing a clay cup of the warm herbal brew to his lips. He drinks slowly, trusting her hands completely. You see in this gesture the answer to the concept of courtly love. While troubadours sang of suffering for a distant, unattainable love, this couple embodies the love that survived the waiting. Maybe they had to wait. You think of the strictures of their world, the arranged marriages, the need for a lord's permission, the fear of scandal that kept young lovers apart. The patience required to simply be together was a test far more grueling than any dragon a knight might face. They had to endure the seasons, the harvest, the expectations of family, and the long, silent winters. But they are here now. The woman wipes a bead of sweat from his temple. She begins to hum, a low, vibrationless sound that barely qualifies as a melody. It is likely not a song written by a famous composer, but a lullaby, or perhaps a fragment of a hymn heard in the village church. It is a sound meant to soothe, to tell him that he is not alone in the dark. You feel a profound sense of respect welling up in your chest. This is the deepest form of medieval romance. It is not found in the adrenaline of the chase or the drama of the forbidden. It is found here, in the simple, heroic act of staying. It is the romance of survival. To care for another when the body is weak, to stay awake while the other sleeps, to be the barrier between a loved one and the cold indifference of the world, this is the true vow. The man's breathing eases. The herbs and the coolness of the cloth are doing their work, but it is her presence that anchors him. He reaches out a hand, his fingers trembling slightly, and finds hers. She does not pull away. She interlaces her fingers with his, a gesture so natural it seems they have grown together like two trees with entangled roots. You watch the firelight dance on their joined hands. You realize that the fear of scandal, the pressure of honor, and the rigid rules of their society have all faded away within these four walls. Here, there is only the truth of their endurance. They have weathered the storms of youth and the hard labor of adulthood to arrive at this quiet evening. The room feels incredibly safe. The storm outside may bluster and the night may be cold, but in this corner of the world there is warmth. You feel your own eyelids growing heavy, lulled by the rhythm of the woman's humming and the soft crackle of the fire. You understand that you are witnessing a victory. Every breath he takes, eased by her care, is a victory. Every moment she sits by his side, refusing to let him face the illness alone, is a triumph of love over mortality. The scene blurs slightly as you relax deeper into your resting place. The woman adjusts the blanket over his shoulders, tucking it in with a tenderness that makes your heart ache in a pleasant, melancholy way. She leans forward and whispers something to him, a few words you cannot catch, perhaps a nickname used only between them, a secret language forged over decades. He closes his eyes, finally drifting into a restful sleep. She does not leave. She stays, a sentinel in the dim light, her hand still resting over his. You feel a wave of peace wash over you. There is no need for worry here. The vigil is being kept. The love that began with a shy glance at a market stall has become a fortress that keeps the night at bay. You let go of the tension in your shoulders, breathing in time with the slow, steady rhythm of the cottage, drifting toward the edge of your own dreams, carried by the certainty that they will be there when the morning comes. The fire has burned down to a deep, glowing bed of coals. You settle more comfortably into the corner of the room, your back resting against the rough-hewn timber of the wall. The air is still thick with the scent of dried sage and the earthy warmth of the peat that has been feeding the hearth all evening. It is a heavy, comforting heat, the kind that seems to slow the passage of time, urging your eyelids to droop and your breathing to deepen. From your quiet vantage point, you watch the elderly couple. The crisis of the illness has passed, leaving behind a stillness that feels sacred. The old man sleeps, his chest rising and falling in a rhythm that is no longer ragged, but soft and steady, like the tide on a calm sea. Beside him, sitting on a low three-legged stool, is his wife. She does not sleep, though her eyes are half closed. She is simply there. You find your gaze drawn to her hands. They rest gently on the woolen blanket covering her husband's legs. In the dim amber light of the embers, those hands tell a story far longer and more complex than any ballad sung in the great halls of lords and ladies. They are weathered hands, mapped with the blue tributaries of veins and the rough texture of 1,000 days of labor. The skin is papery and spotted, loose over the knuckles, yet there is a strength in them that you can feel from across the room. As you look at the way her fingers lightly brush the coarse fabric near his knee, your mind drifts back, imagining the time before these hands were weathered. You find yourself reflecting on a different era, thinking of how a love like this must have begun. In this world, you realize, love did not start with sonnets or elaborate speeches. Words were precious and often dangerous things, prone to being overheard or misunderstood. No, you think, their love likely began in silence. It began with a glance. You imagine them as they might have been 50 years ago.
You see a young woman walking through a bustling market, the air filled with the smell of wood smoke and unwashed wool, the noise of merchants and livestock creating a chaotic wall of sound. And through that noise, a pair of eyes meeting hers. A young man, perhaps pausing in his work in the fields, or standing near the stone arch of the village church as the bells tolled for vespers. There would have been no grand declaration, just a look, a moment of recognition in a crowded place. You imagine the thrill of that secret language, the shared routine of daily life becoming a vessel for affection. Perhaps he learned the time she would go to the village well to draw water, ensuring he was passing by at that exact moment, day after day. The silence between them then was not empty. It was charged, heavy with things they could not yet say. You think of the gifts that might have passed between them in those early tentative days. They would not have been jewels or gold, for such things were for kings, not for people of the earth. You imagine the young man sitting by a fire much like this one, whittling a piece of ash wood with a small knife, carving a simple comb. You can see him smoothing it for hours, polishing it with oil until it shone, a humble offering that spoke of patience and care. And from her, perhaps a ribbon. You picture her working by the light of a tallow candle, her fingers nimble and quick, embroidering a small strip of linen with a pattern of vines or simple crosses, a gift to be tied onto a sleeve or hidden in a pocket, a talisman of connection. Or perhaps it was even simpler, a loaf of bread, the best of the batch, saved specifically for him, warm and wrapped in a cloth. These were the treasures of their courtship, sustenance and service, not performative gestures. You shift slightly in your seat, the straw in the mattress beneath you rustling softly.
The old woman reaches out and adjusts the blanket around the man's shoulders, her movement fluid and practiced. You wonder if their path was easy. In a world governed by strict rules, love was rarely simple. You reflect on the barriers they might have faced, the rigid lines of social standing where a difference in birth or land could turn a glance into a transgression. You think of the parents who might have promised her to another, a match made for security rather than affection, a transaction of livestock and acres. You imagine the fear of scandal, the watchful eyes of the village, the weight of family honor that rested on young shoulders. There must have been moments of despair, nights where the waiting felt endless. The patience required to love in this time was immense. It was a test of endurance. You picture them standing apart during Sunday Mass, separated by the congregation, united only by the knowledge of the other's presence. The church was the center of life, and its bells marked the hours of their longing. But looking at them now, you see the results of that patience. You see the victory of the romance of survival. The courtly tales speak of knights fighting dragons for fair maidens, of dramatic quests and tragic endings. But as you watch the firelight dance on the old woman's silver hair, you realize that the true heroic deeds are found here, in the quiet. Their dragon was hunger in a lean winter. Their quest was raising children who survived the fevers. Their battle was against the breaking of their own bodies under the yoke of the plow and the scythe. Those weathered hands you are staring at, they have scrubbed floors, planted seeds in frozen earth, washed the bodies of the dead, and cradled new life. And they did it together. That is the bond you sense in this room.
It is not a bond forged in the heat of passion, which burns out like dry straw, but a bond forged like iron, beaten and folded over and over again by the hammer of shared burdens. The woman sighs, a soft, contented sound, and rests her hand on top of the sleeping man's hand. He does not wake, but his fingers twitch slightly, instinctively seeking hers, even in his dreams. They are tethered. You feel a profound sense of respect wash over you. In a world that is often harsh and fleeting, this permanence is a miracle. They have witnessed each other's youth fade. They have seen the smooth skin turn into the map of wrinkles you see now. And yet the tenderness remains. It has only grown deeper, settling into the marrow of their bones. The silence in the cottage is no longer just quiet. It is a presence in itself. It is a comfortable, heavy blanket. You realize that they no longer need the glances of their youth, nor the small gifts of ribbons and combs.
They have moved beyond the need for validation. They simply are. Your eyes feel heavy. The rhythmic breathing of the old man is a lullaby, and the warmth of the room wraps around you. You watch the embers pulse, fading slowly from bright orange to a dull, sleepy red. There is a peace here that you want to hold on to, a realization that the greatest love story is not the one that burns brightest, but the one that burns longest. As you let your head rest back against the wall, preparing to close your eyes, you take one last look at the couple. Two shadows blended into one against the firelight. A lifetime of silence, understood perfectly. You breathe in the scent of wood smoke and old memories, and you let the tranquility of their enduring bond pull you towards sleep. The fire in the hearth has settled into a bed of glowing coals, a soft, pulsating heart of orange amidst the gray ash. The room is quiet now, save for the rhythmic, synchronized breathing of the elderly couple sleeping in the corner. You watch them for a moment longer, feeling a lingering warmth in your chest from the story of their life you have just witnessed. It is a story not of dragons or battles, but of something far more resilient, a love that survived the grinding turning of the years. You turn your gaze toward the small leaded window. Through the thick glass, the village below is a tapestry of shadows and flickering lights. The night air, cool and smelling of wood smoke and damp earth, seeps through the cracks, a refreshing contrast to the warmth inside. You find yourself thinking about how love begins in a world like this. It is not a sudden explosion, but a slow, steady dawn. You imagine the young people out there in those houses where candles still burn. You know that here, affection does not start with grand speeches or sonnets shouted from balconies. It begins in silence.
It begins with a glance across a crowded market square, a look held just a second longer than necessary while buying grain. It begins in the hushed reverence of the church, where eyes meet over bowed heads during Mass. It is found in the shared routines of survival, the walk to the water source, the rhythm of the harvest, the quiet moments between chores. You realize that in this era, the most profound language of emotion is silence. It is a language of presence, of simply being near someone else, day after day, until their absence feels like a missing limb. You think of the gifts that might be exchanged in those dimly lit rooms below. They are not diamonds or gold, for such things are the dreams of kings. Here, a gift is a piece of one's soul given form. You imagine a young man carving a comb from a piece of smooth ash wood, working by firelight for weeks, smoothing every tooth until it is perfect for her hair.
You see a woman embroidering a ribbon with trembling hands, stitching a prayer for safety into the fabric, a token to be tied around a sleeve or hidden in a tunic. These are the treasures of the heart, a small religious amulet made of tin pressed into a palm before a journey, a loaf of bread made with the finest flour and honey saved specifically for one person, a melody composed by a wandering troubadour, memorized and hummed softly while working in the fields. These gifts carry the weight of promises that need no words. As you look out over the rooftops, you sense the complexity of the lives hidden beneath the thatch and slate. You feel the ghost of courtly love, that strange and noble dance of distance and desire. You imagine a letter being written, not by the lover, who perhaps cannot read or write, but dictated in a whisper to a scribe or a priest.
The vulnerability of those words spoken aloud to a third party, trusting that the message will carry the true weight of the heart across the miles. There is a melancholy beauty in the patience required here. You think of the knights who love in silence, bound by codes of honor that forbid them from speaking their truth. You think of the marriages arranged for land or lineage, and the quiet, secret gardens where true affection must hide. The waiting is a test, to wait for a war to end, to wait for a season to change, to wait for permission that might never come. In this world, patience is the highest form of devotion. One by one, the lights in the village begin to vanish. You watch a candle flicker out in a house near the mill, then another near the bakery. The golden specks that mirrored the stars are surrendering to the velvet embrace of the night. It is a slow, peaceful extinction. There is no sadness in it, only the natural conclusion of the day's labor.
With each light that disappears, you feel your own energy settling. The village is closing its eyes. The smith has put down his hammer. The weaver has stopped her loom. The fear of scandal, the pressure of family honor, the strict rules of the church, all of these daytime burdens are set aside in the sanctuary of sleep. Under the cover of darkness, everyone is equal. The forbidden loves and the blessed unions all breathe the same night air. You watch the last few candles struggle against the dark. A faint light in the tower, perhaps a scholar or a guard, finally gives up its vigil. The window goes black. Now the village is one with the landscape, a sleeping giant breathing slowly under the moon. You feel a profound sense of connection to all of them. This timeless, enduring web of human experience wraps around you. You understand now that the darkness is not empty, it is full of peace.
It is a heavy, soft blanket that covers the world, quieting the noise, soothing the ache of the day and granting rest to the weary. You turn back to the room. The fire is just a faint red glow now, barely illuminating the floor. You move toward your own resting place. The straw mattress is thick and smells of dried summer grass. You lie down, and the weight of your body sinks into the bed, grateful and heavy. You pull the wool blanket up to your chin. The texture is rough but warm, a tangible comfort. You close your eyes, but the image of the sleeping village remains in your mind, a silent testament to the persistence of life. Your breathing slows, matching the rhythm of the couple in the corner, matching the imagined rhythm of the village outside, in and out, deep and slow. The darkness is gentle. It presses softly against your eyelids. You feel safe here, anchored in this moment of absolute stillness. The worries of the world have dissolved into the shadows. There is nothing left to do. There is nothing left to see. You let go. You drift, carried by the silent current of the night. The stories of ribbons and combs, of glances and long waits fade into a soft, indistinct hum. The silence is perfect. It guides you deeper and deeper into the warm, timeless embrace of a deep, peaceful sleep.